Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. We are all too familiar with the narrative surrounding wide-scale support for the LGBTQ plus agenda. The normalization of this agenda is now infiltrating our elementary schools and is built on disinformation that boils down to a simple concept that God made a mistake. Gender confusion, same-sex attraction, and the internal battles that rage in the souls of many is a desperate cry for help. But what if there were forces at work to actually criminalize, demonize, and legislate the prohibition of organizations offering help to those struggling with this rapidly growing social and spiritual crisis? Stephen Black has been the executive director of First Stone Ministry since 2000. He's worked in full-time Christian ministry and leadership with First Stone since 1993. He was ordained with International Ministerial Fellowship in 1994. He's an author of many articles and teaching aids, including the book Freedom Realized, Finding Freedom from Homosexuality and Living a Life Free from Labels. He is the executive director of First Stone. You can find out more information about him at firststone.org. He's a regular guest on our program, and we are honored to have him back to give us an update about some of the government wranglings and the new voices that seem to be growing louder and louder to orient our children to a life of confusion. Is our good friend Stephen Black. Stephen, great to see you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
So important a topic that we missed you last month because you were called into meetings to give insights, and then this new examination into deprogramming and the accusations that are being levied against organizations that are on the literally answering it's like the suicide hotline. You're answering calls from people desperately crying for help, and they're trying to insert themselves into it. It really, in my mind, is tantamount to the suicide hotline, and people telling you what you can say, what you cannot say, what you should say, and what the party line is going to be, which is simply that, look, your life is your own, and you're in charge of your life. So if you choose to take it, we are not in a position to sway you one way or the other. We're just here if you want us on the phone while you do it, and that will make you feel more comfortable. We'll just listen in while you hang yourself or you OD. And that's how I summate what they're trying to do to you, from what I can tell, is that exact same thing.
That's right. There's a lot going on in our country in regard to, it is a political narrative of an LGBTQ and the plus sign. People should pay attention to that plus sign, of the idea of making that behavior synonymous with the innate God-given divine intention of what we call heterosexuality, one man and one woman. And they're wanting to make this behavior across the board equal to what would be gender and race. And there is a huge political machine at work. The Human Rights Campaign, which is the biggest gay lobby in Washington, D.C., they also have what are called faith initiative programs to actually infiltrate the church with the idea of normalizing LGBTQ behavior under some new terminology called sexual minorities in the church. And so this is happening at a pretty rapid pace in our country. At the same time, with this at the federal level, you've got the Democrats that have already passed this through the House of Representatives last year, which is called the Equality Act. And this is a resolution. It's not a law yet, but the resolution is the idea of a very stealth way, a very methodical way for the LGBT political machine to infiltrate into higher learning, education systems, city governments, and at county level. And what they do is they bring this resolution and say, well, this resolution has been passed, and therefore there should be compliance to this at city governments, at ordinance levels, at city ordinance levels, and then at colleges and universities and higher learning, and then also in the National Education Association, that we need to have a LGBTQ curriculum and history, and now teaching the most formative of children from K to 12 to normalize all of this behavior. And I know, throwing a lot of this out to the listeners, this may seem overwhelming, that this is what we're up against. This is what is taking place in our country. And we have California and Illinois and New Jersey that have already passed these ordinances, and at state levels, to infiltrate all the education systems, that there is a demand that our children learn that homosexual behavior, that lesbianism, being bisexual, being transgendered, and now that they say it themselves, being queer or queering, and the plus sign, that this is normative behavior. And this is oppressive. And so we are putting together, First Stone Ministries, a conference in April to combat this. It's called godsvoice.us, and it's a biblical response to now this new broader sense of what really is, Rabbi. It's tyranny. They are censoring in all social media. They are now at the American Medical Association demanding that transgenderism be normalized. You've got all the education systems that are embracing this. There is an all-out attack on Judeo-Christian values that believe a biblical worldview for human sexuality. They want to change women's sports to where you have transgendered men who have, body structures, muscle tone, and bone structure, that of a male. And then because they take female hormones, that now they're going to compete as women. This thing is upside down. And they want these transgendered people to be able to go into our daughters' showers and gymnasiums at all levels of school and normalize all of this chaos. And then they want to tell you, they want to tell me, like in California, that if you're a pastor or if you're a spiritual leader, you cannot speak out against LGBTQ as sinful. This is an attack on freedom of speech. This is what's going on in California. They're actually trying to pass laws to make it illegal to speak out against LGBTQ behavior.
You bring up an interesting point, and I want to give some perspective to it. I went through I graduated with a BS in education, and was not raised in a world where there was no federal Department of Education until the Reagan administration, and so Bill Bennett was the first Secretary of the Department of Education. It was the first time that the federal government overstepped the bounds of each state having the responsibility and turned it into a federal office. And out of that grew the distortion of Common Core, which is Alabama has withdrawn from Common Core. Our state says we are not going to take direction from the federal government. They have no business in our state. We have a governor. We have a state legislature. We have our own Department of Education at the city and county level, and therefore they are to choose the curriculum which is appropriate for the reading level and the performance level of the community that they serve, and that having a uniform standard is foolish, that the young child in Selma, Alabama might be at the who lives on the family cotton farm, and after school, instead of doing homework, is working in the field, and that their reading level is below par, and that they should be fed information that they can't even process, and that we have to get things like reading levels, because that's what is the issue in our penitentiaries, is that illiteracy, the welfare rolls, illiteracy. It is the root of all these problems. Now you add the fact that we've abandoned literacy for now legislating what is a minority representing less than 3% of the population of the United States,
Yep.
as another example of a protected group that is going to make the 97% conform so that you don't say the wrong things. There was legislation that was offered in New York that said that if you use the wrong pronoun, you were subject to a fine. You could be charged with a crime. This is the point of being ludicrous. Okay, I agree. The church needs education in what. When I came into the ministry and was in the pulpit, and recognized that there were practicing same-sex couples within my congregation, I was able to speak with them and candidly said to them, we are like Delta Airlines. You cannot bring your baggage on board. So you have to check your bags at the door. The gospel is available to you. You are welcome here. But you will not bring your lifestyle into the house of the Lord. You will conduct yourself in the same manner of an unmarried couple. Whether or not you have this civil union or whatever, I will not recognize it from the pulpit. So therefore, I tell young couples as they come in, if you two are not married, don't be all over each other. I don't want you with your arms around each other. I don't want to peck on the cheek. I want you to sit next to each other. You can, hold hands, but this old lovey-dovey business, you're a 50-year married couple, you can do whatever you want. But if you're not married, then you'll conduct yourself in decency and order in the house of the Lord, bringing respect, glory, and honor to the one who created you. I don't care what your persuasion is. Your marital status is, in this congregation, it's a man and a woman. And even to the point that in counseling, of premarital counseling, if there's a couple that are living together, I will have them in my office decide on which mother and father they are calling to say, I'm moving back home because Rabbi won't marry us as long as we're living together. And he's telling me that I need to be out in 24 hours. I need to move back home. So Mom and Dad, can I move back home for the next 6 weeks until my wedding day, so that I at least have made an attempt to bring honor back into what I've already dishonored? Can I go into this repentative mode? Can I go into this at least understand, at least have some, and the issue is that love can wait. Lust cannot. So I didn't have a problem in talking with same-sex couples, telling them the gospel was for them. This was, and I wasn't going to reject them and put them out on the street and say, you're not welcome here. Your lifestyle. The same way, my alcoholic congregants can't bring a flask into the sanctuary and drink out of it. My smokers can't smoke in the pew. My junkies, right, can't sniff a line in the pew. Okay, it's not that one is higher than another. It's just we're telling you, check all of that stuff at the door, okay? And then come and bring a pleasing sacrifice to the Lord. At least your heart's in the right place. You're not distracted by all these other things. And if I should say from the pulpit that God's definition in the story of creation is that marriage was the union for the purpose of replenishing the earth, for producing children, that was the purpose. For this reason, a man will leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and they will become one. This is the purpose, was to replenish the earth, to repopulate the earth, and to build the line of the seed line of Messiah, to bring Messiah into this world, and then to call for his return. There's a great, glorious purpose to the design. And if you want to go against that design, and I would say it from the pulpit, if I today have stepped on your feet during my message, then next week I will encourage you to move your feet, because I'm not going to change the message. Now, in many cases, because they were welcome, and because I did speak to them candidly, openly, in love, and said to them, look, that guy over there drinks and smokes cigars, but not in the house of the Lord. Get it? And they say, yeah, that's clear. Okay, you treat it all the same. It's all the same. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and created an open environment where, listen, we're not acknowledging, we're not endorsing, we're not supporting, we're not condemning, because we don't serve a God of condemnation, but we are going to put some order around your behavior in the confines of this property. And never had a problem in addressing it. And nobody tried to defy it, because they knew I would come down from the pulpit in the middle of a message. And if I saw it, I would just reach over and I would take and I would move them apart. And I'd have an usher come over and say, move them apart. I'm still on a microphone. I'm going to say, move them apart. And I said, you're responsible for drawing that kind of negative attention. Don't quarrel with me. I told you at the beginning. You check your bags at the door. Delta Airlines. Okay, we're going to give you a little bit of carry-on, but you can't bring your bags on board. And never had a problem. Never had a problem. But to legislate this, when I think about the fact that my daughter is 30, just had her first baby, 6 months old, that she's going to be facing an indoctrination. That's exactly what this is, because she's raised to be a little girl, and she is going to be treated as a little girl, and she's going to have but the movies, it's just so invasive, and it's become such a big focus for such a small group.
It really has. You know, Rabbi, when I think about what we're talking about and the oppressiveness and the crazy stuff going on in our culture, it's coming from the place of knowing the redemption that we have in Messiah. It's coming from the hope that we have and the hope that we want others to have. And even in your own expression of having good boundaries within, within the congregation of believers, the ecclesia, the believers coming together, that is about love. And even nature itself, Paul told the Romans, nature itself says that there is a God. Nature proclaims there is a God, and that there is a natural divine order for human sexuality. And so the unfortunate thing is that we're living in a time when there's an erosion that's taking place in the minds of people, where they've been kind of inundated, and there's an inoculation of evil becoming good and good becoming evil, and an erosion. And so they're being blinded by that which even nature proclaims. And so it is important that we continue to tell people the truth. There may come a day when people are going to really oppress and push back on those of us who will not compromise the gospel of Jesus Christ, because true love speaks boldly the truth, because it is the compassionate thing to do. And I'm so glad that I had a pastor in my early years of coming out of homosexuality. People, if they've just heard the beginning of this, that they need to know that I came out of homosexuality 37 years ago, and Jesus Christ radically transformed my life. I was a gay man for 8 years in my most formative years of development, which psychologists would say is impossible for someone like me to change. And yet I know hundreds of people that have changed and come full circle and are living, fully surrendered lives to Jesus. And I know it's in your heart and my heart that people have hope, even in the chaos that we're facing, even in the erosion in the church. Like we have the president of the Southern Baptists, in November, proclaiming this idea of pronoun hospitality, and the idea that we need to be hospitable to something that you yourself was saying, no, we need to set that apart. And we don't call men women and women men. That is detestable in the sight of God. And we cannot give compromise to these people that are living in dysfunction, or we're not loving them if we do.
As counselors, and that's the role that you and I play in ministry, is in this, whether it's at the larger, the macro, or the micro with a one-on-one. The struggle that I see is that there are those that are living this life, and they remain in this life because they have no concept of what life would be like if they didn't have this community. If they left this community, what community is waiting for them?
That's right.
Who am I if I am not this, is the big question. So it really is, it's not just a gender identity crisis, it's just a simple identity crisis. My identity is shaped by the lifestyle I live, as opposed to the lifestyle I live is based on who I know myself to be. And so if they were in counseling and they were dealing with depression, anxiety, they were dealing with panic disorders, things like that, we would look at the root cause and we would show them the other side. Here's what terror looks like, but here's what peace looks like, and we talk to them about that. There is a community that gets along. They live in the lifestyle in the community to get along because they don't know who they are. There is no identity for them on the other side. And I think as the church, we have failed to create a message that says we are the ones waiting for you with open arms, and we will find ways to help you transition. We will find support systems that are going to not label you, and not indoctrinate you into a new life, but to allow you to acquire and help you acquire those mechanisms so that they can be like you, who came out of that lifestyle, found your identity in Messiah, grabbed a hold of it, have a wonderful 32-year plus marriage, have a productive ministry and a productive life, that it's not a value proposition we're talking about, it's answering the big vacuum question that says, if I'm not this, then what am I? And if I'm not with them, then who will take me? And if I leave this very close-knit, the bars, the dating sites, the lifestyle, the culture that goes along with it, the families whose hearts grieve in one side and don't want to reject. They're repulsed by their own rejection of their own flesh and blood. So they're fighting a war too. So this is not just something that it's like when I talk about abortion. It's not just the woman that had the abortion. Who drove her there? They're an accessory to murder. What about the man? He's either active or inactive, but yet he is still a consequence of this life that was his family. What about his family that didn't have that grandchild, didn't have that niece, didn't have that nephew? It's a compounding. And we tend to look at the individual, and we become so self-focused that we forget that the community at large is impacted by the actions of one.
Yeah.
And we have answers of who you can be. This is, quite honestly, the value proposition of Islam in the prisons. Okay? You are an outcast of society, but you can become a brother to us. And if you'll come alongside of us and join with us, we will rally around you, and you will have a family, and you will have an identity in this brotherhood. And so this is the colonization of our penal system, where it's ripe for those people who are disenfranchised, disconnected, are the outcast of society, are the sociopaths, they have the psychological, mental health challenges, but yet they're drawn into this, and it begins to build their numbers. Now you have an LGBTQ plus, which is saying, hey, we'll be your family. Okay, you don't fit your family model. Okay, you don't even have an idea who you are, but we'll tell you who you are. As a matter of fact, we're going to tell you when you're 7 years old when we show you this film, and we have a transvestite or a transgender come in and speak to you and read to you out of a book that's written by and for the exposure. How dare they take that from the parent? That sex education, when it moved into the school system, is to me a violation of my right as a parent as to when I know my child better than my teacher knows my child, when she's ready to hear what it is she needs to hear, and it's my responsibility to deliver that message to her. So, as you know, I'm passionate about this in all areas. I'm passionate about addiction. I'm passionate about homelessness. I'm passionate about orphan care. I'm passionate about these because this is part of the experience of the biblical worldview in a non-biblical environment that we're living in. And you, my friend, are on the front lines and talking with these legislators and trying to show them the error of what it is that they are promoting within your own state and the larger picture. We're talking with Stephen Black, who is the Executive Director of First Stone Ministries. You can find him at stephenblack.org or the ministry site, firststone.org. He is the author of the book Freedom Realized, Finding Freedom from Homosexuality and Living a Life Free from Labels. This is his story and a call for us to hold the line on holiness. We are seeing in Washington, in this debacle of that the words of King Solomon, where there are many words, sin abounds. And we hear the ramblings on and on and on of the same message over and over and over again, louder and louder each time it's presented, until you either acquiesce to the overwhelming power of this assault, or you stand your ground. And this is a clarion call for us to stand our ground in this matter of our government. After the days when America redefined sex in the Bill Clinton impeachment, in the days when we as a nation redefined marriage in the Obergefell decision. Now we are redefining gender, and that is the highest form of pride. That is Satan talking, who says he will ascend to the throne of heaven. He will do all these things, and that God made a mistake, and free will means I can determine. I'm given a license from God to determine what I want to be and defy the scientific evidence that you cannot be both. There's an X and there's a Y.
That's right.
And that's all there is. And science does not support that you're born gay. But yet, this is the agenda. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to hear what the other side is saying to you, Stephen, in these meetings that you're called into. What they're saying to you that is compelling on the surface, seems noble as they justify, but you, having a biblical lens, can see right through it to find out who's behind it. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Stephen Black from First Stone Ministries. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English, and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Stephen Black, author of Freedom Realized, Finding Freedom from Homosexuality, Living a Life Free from Labels, and the executive director of First Stone Ministries. You can find them at firststone.org. Stephen, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate it.
Stephen, what you're coming up against from what you've told me is legislation passed in 19 states now that says that the therapy which was being used, which had a label attached to it, which really wasn't an accurate or correct assessment, is that any person below the age of 18, that no practitioner may engage in a reorientation or information, education, awareness, and choice or options presented to the individual, that there is some other way, and that they only can be involved in affirmation therapy, which confirms and then encourages and acknowledges. This ties the hand of psychologists. This ties the hands of professionals by people who are not trained professionals. In your experience, just there in Oklahoma, are you meeting with people who have PhDs in psychology?
Meeting with legislators, and then there are already friends that are PhDs and licensed therapists that are in this battle in dealing with and then exposure of what's really going on, because it's very politically driven, in that there is a lot of ambiguous testimony that's given, like through the Trevor Project and through these gay activists that actually will go into these hearings and lie when they say they've been harmed by counselors or therapists or even ministries. Then when you ask where and the names of these people, because if somebody is actually doing some kind of abusive therapy, I would be the first to say they need to be, have their license removed or, have an investigation made. But they never are able to come up with real names. They say that they're traumatized and they forget the locations, and they will allow these testimonies to go forward for the idea under a ruse term called conversion therapy. And that's a made-up term by the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Human Rights Commission. It's not even a term that any therapist, professional counselor has ever used. The idea of conversion, bringing a conversion of a person's mind or way of living, except the gospel of Jesus Christ brings a converting of the soul. And so they're really after that. It's ironic that even here in Oklahoma, the last few months, when they've done news pieces and they've interviewed me, they'll bring up the gay banner in the news piece with the cross. And yet they'll finish off the news piece and say, well, this really wouldn't affect First Stone Ministries because they're offering pastoral care and they're not offering professional therapy or professional counseling. And yet they bring the gay rainbow and the cross in it, and they talk about praying the gay away. So it's very disingenuous. And so their narrative really is about an attack on anyone who wants to offer hope of a different lifestyle other than living gay identified for youth. Now, this is the question that isn't being asked. Just think about it. More than 55 to 60% of the males, higher percentage on females that are sexually abused as children. And why wouldn't a group of people want to help sexually confused children? Well, if you just look at it for what it is they want to welcome these people these youth into their community. And what they're telling these therapists is you cannot offer any kind of sexual orientation change efforts. You cannot give them hope of something different than to be lesbian or gay or bisexual or transgender, and that it should be celebrated because it's the in thing. It's the good thing. And anybody that tries to tell you that you can change, they're the enemy. Well, I I have communicated in the news and many times, they're saying that to tell a child that there's hope is child abuse. But I'm saying that if you take away hope of a sexually confused child who's been sexually abused, that is child abuse. And
So,
I know that that was true in my own life, and I needed help, and I needed hope. And so many of the people that we minister to, Rabbi Eric, these people need hope. They need counseling. They need to be able to process the traumas of their life. And they're wanting to take all that away and normalize homosexuality. Well, let's just look at that, what it really is. That's propagandist to bring an influx of young people into the gay community. That is grooming children into homosexuality. That's what that is.
everything I'm hearing you say has all these red flags just going off my head. So if I'm struggling with my sexual identity and I turn to drugs, if I was molested and I became and drank at 9 years old, if I went into the drug culture at 9 years old because I was sexually molested by an uncle or by somebody, and that was my response mechanism, that's like saying they can't go to AA.
That's right.
That's like saying they can't go to NA. That's saying that they need to accept that they're an alcoholic and join a bunch of people at the bar. And,
That's exactly
and
right. You're doing it with common sense.
Right, and celebrate being drunk. Celebrate being a junkie. Celebrate what, why aren't we having needles and bottles in banners? Black, Johnny Walker Black, Johnny Walker Red, and what's the big deal with fentanyl and opioids and all these things? This is how people are coping with the fact that there was sexual assault as a child. We know statistically, based on the analysis of what's happened in the church,
Yep.
how, and in the higher education system, and now in the lower education system, as more and more cases are coming to light of coaches, people who find themselves in the occupation where they're surrounded by children. This is not a singular. Child abuse, child sexual abuse is nothing recorded in any of the journals of a single event. It's just a random thing that happened. It is pervasive, it is repeated, it is an addiction, it is a character, it is a mental illness, so are we saying that if you are a child molester, we should put you into a colony of other child molesters and feed you?
Surprisingly, Rabbi, the APA, the American Psychological Association, actually want to change the terminology from pedophilia to MAPS and YAPS. So that's an acronym: MAP, minor attracted person, and that would be prepubescent attraction to children, and that is a legitimate orientation, or a YAP, a youth attracted person, which would be a person who is attracted to a post-pubescent teenager or young person, and legitimize these as orientations. The American Psychological Association actually want the American public to embrace this new wave of orientation. That is what that plus sign is in LGBTQ and the plus sign. That's part of the plus sign.
The Bible is very clear that a little leaven spoils the whole batch. This is the 3% wagging the 97%. This is clandestine because this is not covered by the media. This is not This is happening behind closed doors. I'm not a member of the American Psychiatric Association, and so if I am identified as a youth-attracted person, and I am diagnosed as such, then when I act out upon it, am I now immune from criminal prosecution because I am a protected group with rights based on my identity? And society has no responsibility to disclose that, because now that's a HIPAA violation. You see, that becomes a medical diagnosis and is taken out of the public lexicon and moved into the HIPAA Protective Act, which allows for me to diagnose you in the privacy of my office that you are a youth attracted person, and that when your behavior, when you are arrested or you're caught, that we can bring into plea bargaining with the DA based on the fact that you have already been pre-diagnosed with this condition. We can't disclose it to the court, but as the grand jury convenes and the DA is assigned to prosecute on this, we say, wait a second, hold on a second, it's by reason of his diagnosis. And they say, okay, well, we'll put him in an alternative sentencing program, and we're not going to punish him for this because it is it's identified, agreed upon psychological diagnosis by a psychiatrist, medical practitioner, HIPAA protected.
Now, a year before last, the Democrat body in California actually proposed a law making it a 10-year status of non-reporting. So if you were a 10-year-old and a person of 20 years of age had sex with a 10-year-old, that wouldn't even need to be reported as a sexual criminal offense. So they were going to actually expand it to 10 years that did not need to have any kind of criminal reporting. Now, thank God that didn't go very far, but this is the mindset of people and some of our legislators and leaders now in our country that are so far removed from God's ways of human loving relating that we would now make it to where that wouldn't be even criminal or reportable. And that's outrageous. But that is some of the new wave of psychology that is coming in to even the legislative bodies throughout the nation.
I want to encourage every one of our audience here in America and around the world that this is an issue that's going to be knocking on your door pretty soon. If you're in a state in North America that hasn't addressed this, somebody's going to bring this very ultra-liberal legislation to bear and put a lot of pressure on people. I don't know who the beneficiary is yet. I can't find the money, but there is money somewhere to be made. And if it's not in Big Pharma, which is the first place I always go to in looking at these situations, who is underwriting this because they're going to benefit financially from it? And that's where we have to look at the special interest group that are driving this. But invite Stephen Black into your congregation. Visit First Stone Ministries and look at the resources that they offer. Get his book, Freedom Realized, Finding Freedom from Homosexuality. If you're struggling, if you have a story which is welled up inside of you that's affecting your life that you've never told anybody, and it has brought you into a lifestyle that you know is an outcropping of this gaping wound that's inside of you that you've been unable to share, there are people out there who want to hear from you and grab a hold of your hand and help you take your scared hand and put it in the scarred hand of our Messiah. Stephen Black, author of Freedom Realized. Visit ignitingnation.com. Look at today's date, today's calendar, and you'll find the name Stephen Black, and click on it and get a copy of this for yourself. Stephen Black, thank you for this hour you spent with us. We will see you in your regular slot coming up on the, when do you come on?
February 17th, I believe.
Right, you come on March, that's March. You're in February, so it will be, yes, on February 17th, Monday the 17th, as you are on with us on the third Monday of every month. And we'll continue in this dialogue. And we thank you and bless you for who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless
Shalom.
you. Thank you. Shalom. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.